Hello, everyone, and welcome back. And I am so excited to welcome back the mega talented Gia Graham. Welcome, Gia.
Hi. Nice. Thanks for having me.
It's so good to see you. We were chatting just before we went live. You're currently in your haven. You have built a little home studio, and it does look very peaceful.
Thank you. It is very peaceful.
What are you going to be teaching the Design Cuts community today?
So today I'm going to show how to create illustrative hand lettering using negative space. This is something that I've been experimenting with and playing around with a little bit. And I can show a couple of examples of what I've been doing lately.
Awesome. Yeah.
All right. So I've been playing around with this. If any of you follow me on Instagram, you might have seen this piece that I created for International Women's Day this year, where I used negative space. And then recently I got to design a watch for a British brand, actually. I don't know if you're familiar with Mr. Jones watches, Tom.
It does ring a bell.
They're a small independent brand and they do really conceptual watches. So we did this piece using negative space and illustration for the watch. And some of you might have seen this piece that I posted on Instagram recently as well. And this is the one that I'm going to recreate and show you guys how I've done it.
Incredible. I mean, that is beautiful. Like, I'm a sucker for lettering and illustration, and I know we're going to get the best of both worlds. So let us know in the live chat if you're excited to dive in and learn with Gia and I today.
So I will go ahead and get started. So it's actually a very, very simple process. To start with, you can just start with very basic letter forms for whatever word or symbol you want to use. I've already drawn my word here, and my tip would be to make sure that the strokes on the letters are really nice and wide and very simplified. That's going to make it easier to use the negative space. So if you make your lettering a little too complex, it's going to be tougher to read once we add the illustration. So to get started, basically, I'm going to turn my guides on here. I usually sketch, by the way, using Procreate's very basic 6B pencil. Comes with Procreate. And as I mentioned, I've already inked this lettering. I'm going to reduce the opacity to just not make that stand out quite so much. And on a new layer is where I'm going to do all of my sketching. So what we want to do is whatever objects you're going to illustrate around the lettering, and by the way, that can be anything you want it to be. I do a lot of floral illustration in my work, so of course I'm going to be doing leaves and flowers, but you know, it can be geometric shapes, it can be food illustrations, you know, whatever you want it to be, whatever works best for you. So the idea is to simply kind of trace the outline of each letter form with your illustrations. So for example, I'm going to start here and I'm going to kind of use this as the basis for my first flower. So I'm going to draw the center of the flower, and this will start my petals.
I can already tell this is going to be another calm session. we hear all the time people are like, this is like a meditation.
It really is very calming, and it reminds me of puzzling actually. When I do this kind of lettering, it's kind of like when you're working on a puzzle where you're having to fit pieces together and kind of try something, and maybe it won't work, so you try something else, but it's a very relaxing type of problem solving.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's going to serve as like the top curve of my C. And then I'm going to come around here for this bottom curve. And I think I'll make this a stem ending in a leaf here.
I'm going to have to ask one of my good friends about the watch as well, because he is like the biggest watch addict I've ever met.
Really?
He knows so much about all the watch brands and tries to collect them and stuff.
Oh, I absolutely. Mr. Jones Watches is definitely a collector's brand. So all of their watches are very conceptual. And he works with artists to create the watches. So, and the time markers are all built into the design. So on my watch, the hour hand is a big orange flower and the minute hand is a little pink flower. So
cool.
yeah, they're really, really, and it's a tiny company. There's not that many of them that work there, but they're really awesome to work with. And the watch I created for them was a limited edition run, so they only made 100 of them, but they sold out in 4 hours. So we're gonna kind of do a slightly altered version, and it will be added to their permanent collection.
What a fun client project as well.
Oh my goodness, it was so fun. Okay, so here, my trick here is to kind of create the inner curve of the C. So obviously I can't do one giant round leaf. So I'm just gonna figure out how to make some leaves kind of fall into this space here. And I also have this, this area to fill. So I'm gonna make a big leaf here. And the thing is, you kind of have to strike a balance between making your objects look natural, like, you know, if it's a leaf you're drawing, you want it to look like a leaf, but also fit the open area in a way that it reveals the letter form.
I was going to say, you can't have a leaf with like a perfectly straight edge.
Exactly, exactly. I actually think I'm gonna do something a little different here. And it's a lot of kind of trial and error, see what works. Some things might not.
I'm sure you're about to demonstrate this, but is it about filling every bit of negative space with something? So I'm looking at the inner bowl of that C.
Yeah, for the most part. Like, and the thing is with this negative space lettering, it can be as defined or as loose as you want it to be. Now, you don't want it to be so loose that nobody can read it. But here, for example, technically, I should have something here if I'm going to kind of make this C feel more complete. Here is another area where it's not perfectly completed, but I feel like your brain kind of fills in that space. So it's one of those things where you kind of just have to keep checking it, keep turning off your lettering layer to see what you're working with, and then coming back and filling little areas. So since that kind of needed to be filled a little bit more, I think I'm going to rework this leaf so it comes around and fills that space a little bit better.
And I guess the beauty of working with leaves and flowers is they can be very malleable.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of a cheat, really. You can kind of do whatever you want. All right, so I'm going to fill this little triangular space here. And I know this moving around of the screen kind of does not agree with you, Tom, but sorry.
I'm good, actually. I'm good. I haven't been drinking today, so.
All right, I can already tell that this is going to create a weird shape at the top of the A, so I know that I'm going to have to fill that a little bit better. This needs to fill this space a little bit better as well.
We just mentioned your newsletter, by the way, and there's already people saying how much they're loving it and the color palettes and stuff. So take advantage, everyone, for sure.
Yeah, I actually just featured some of my newsletter subscribers on my Instagram this morning because they used this month's palette. And I usually try to feature at least a few lettering artists, illustrators who have used the palette. For the month, I try to feature a few people every month. It's always nice to see how other people use the same colors and how much diversity there is or can be. All right, so I'm gonna need to delineate the top of this L. Say again?
Sorry, there was a weird lag thing there.
Oh.
Where I think we lagged over each other.
Oh, okay.
I was trying to open your Instagram, and I think it lagged the whole internet out, which is terrible.
These areas
so pretty already.
Thanks. These areas where there's very straight letters next to each other get a little tricky when you're using kind of organic shapes to get to fill those very straight areas can be a little challenging.
Yeah, it's kind of paradoxical, right? Normally shapes like an S would be the toughest, but I'm guessing with this, probably the easiest.
An S would be the easiest, yeah. Okay, let's see. Okay, we're getting there. That worked out.
Bill says this is already looking wonderful, even in just black and white.
Thank you. All right, this one's going to be a challenge. That's an odd shape to fill.
I feel like this negative space floral typographic technique actually would have a surprising number of applications.
It could. It certainly could.
You know? I mean, like, I never would have thought of a watch face, but it works so well. And, you know, of course, it could work anything from spas to restaurants.
Oh, yeah.
To, like, anything lifestyle brand.
Yeah, like with the food, I thought about that and I was like, oh, that could be great for a restaurant or grocery store, even farmer's market. Be a great application for that.
I'd love to see some of the food letterers that we're friends with try this with actual food, like Lauren Holm or Becca Klassen. You know, they could try some negative space.
Yeah, that would be fun. Okay, let's I'll do the inside of this M. And then I can check how my negative letters are looking. Does anybody have any questions so far? Or is anybody drawing along?
Oh yeah, let us know. Yeah, let us know. Are you following along? Hopefully. There's normally a few of you absolutely working away on the iPad. Katharina says she is. M. Ashkenazeh says they are as well. Sam says, I'm absorbing first, then trying this out.
I would probably
too
do
much
that
multitasking.
I'm a very visual learner, so I need to soak it all in first.
Oh yeah, I'm the same. Cassandra's drawing along as well. Yeah, I think it's a real mix looking at the chat.
Good.
I think everyone's just loving the technique, to be honest. Like, it's one of those where I don't know if it leads to a lot of questions. Like it's a relatively simple technique.
It's very simple.
But it's so effective and it's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's super simple. It looks more complex than it really is.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. When I saw the outcome, I was like, okay, that looks amazing, but how? And as soon as you started drawing, I was like, oh, yeah, of course, that makes sense.
Not so bad. All right, so we're getting there. This side of my M is not coming together just yet, so I have to figure that out. I think I may have to make a large leaf coming in the opposite direction here.
Ooh, good idea.
So that I can define that.
Also, I just want to take a quick second to shout out the team behind the scenes who've all been fantastic as ever throughout this event. And shout out to Jem, who's behind the scenes in the chat with all of you today. And Jem famously hates compliments and gets really awkward, which I love. So Jem, you're amazing, and everyone tell Jem how amazing she is.
You're amazing, Jem. Soak it in, girl. Soak it in.
She's sending me chats behind the scenes now.
All right. Got some space fillers to do here. I'm still not thrilled with how this is turning out. Let me see. Something's wonky there. I need to make a little adjustment. And that's the thing. It might take several tries before it comes together just the way you want it. And that's okay.
Okay, we've got a couple of good questions that are coming in. So Jen asks, how do you decide when to draw in the foreground of the letters versus behind or around?
I'm not sure that I understand the question, because here we're not in the foreground or background. Because we're kind of just revealing the letter forms in negative space, we're just drawing everything around each letter form.
So to rephrase, because I know what you mean, there is no behind or background with this technique, but there are some where you're kind of very intentionally going around the letter, whereas there's some where it's acceptable to like overlap it a bit, I guess. How do you make that call?
That's one of those things where I know this is an awful answer, but it's one of those where kind of, if it feels right, go for it, you know? Because really the only major rule is keep it legible. You know, if it's not this technique, say it's just regular lettering and you're incorporating illustration, your biggest goal is to just make everything legible. So as you're working through it, just make the choices that will give you the most legible result, really.
Is there a difference in legibility with the complexity of letters? So, for example, a simple I would be more basic a letter form than the M here or something like that. Does that impact legibility with this technique? Like, do you have to work harder to make an M legible than an I, or
yes,
vice versa?
For sure. And as we kind of touched on earlier, the straight letter forms, even though those are easier to letter under normal circumstances, in this case, they become a little bit more tricky. Like I'm still trying to get this M to look like an M, you know? So it does make it a little bit harder with this technique when the letter form has, you know, lots of little nooks and crannies that you have to fill to make it recognizable.
Yeah, like the C flowed really easily, right?
It was super easy.
Damn you, M. Finishing the word on a difficult note.
Yeah. So, and I'll come back to the M too. Just let me get I'll get the bottom part sorted, and then I can kind of get a better feel for what needs to be fixed or adjusted. I'm going to do another big flower here since we have all of this kind of straight line space. And again, I'm not working with elements that have straight lines. So I think the best thing to do here will be to put another flower here, which will delineate the bottom of all three of these letters.
Is that a daisy?
Yes, tis. Tis a little daisy.
Oh, I know my flowers, Gia.
Well, every once in a while I will draw a recognizable flower, but for the most part, they just come out of my head. So don't try to figure out what they are, because you'll be stuck. It's really just a cheat, because it's much easier to draw imaginative florals than it is to draw real ones. And it's more fun. I actually have a Skillshare class on drawing techniques for drawing imaginative flowers.
That's
I'm
pretty
having
cool.
fun with it.
We can link it up.
Thanks. And I've had a lot of students say, hey, this was way more fun than trying to get a rose look like a rose. All right. I think by comparison, these are a little bit large. I'm just going to reduce the size ever so slightly. All right. And I think a couple other little details, and I'll be mostly done. All right, let's see how this is looking.
Amazing is how it's looking.
All right, I think
looks so beautiful.
I think that's legible. Can you guys easily read that?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. I feel like
the bottom of the A is the only bit that's slightly tough with the gap.
This section here?
I can't see your pen.
This section
here?
here?
Yeah, like that bit on the left.
Yeah, that's a tricky one.
That's me being super fussy.
But you're right, though, because see, I have nothing where the A stops. I have nothing kind of filling that space there. So let's see. It might be a scenario where I need more than one leaf. And here with the L, I think maybe if I can find a way to turn this leaf down a little bit, I can create a little bit more definition. Yeah. Okay.
It's looking nice.
So I'll go ahead and ink this. And the other thing that I've been experimenting with lately is just a much looser, freer kind of style of lettering, of inking my lettering. So I'm going to use this Dry Textures brush pack by Trailhead Design Co. And it's a great way to bring some good texture into a piece and also make it easier to ink. Like, you don't have to be so precious when you're doing this kind of really loose inking style. So I'm gonna start a new layer. Again, I like to reduce the opacity on my sketches just to kind of push them to the background a little bit. And I'm gonna use the same palette combination that I used for the piece that I posted on Instagram. So I'm using my May palette. I'm going to go with the cream background.
I know I've mentioned it before, Gia, but I adore your color palettes.
Thank you. They're so fun. Like I did it one year and I never thought that I would still be doing it, but it's really kind of seeped into how I work. Like in general now, it's really become part of my process.
Well, it's part of your visual style as well. Like I can identify your pieces by the palettes alone.
Yeah, it's become that for sure. Just because it's something that I do so much. Okay, so I'm gonna start with my leaves. And I usually, can you guys see this okay? Okay.
Yep.
I usually ink in black first because I find it's easier just to see what I'm doing. But in this case, I think we can go straight to color. We also are, you know, we don't have a whole lot of time. But and anyone who's been to my Instagram page and watched my process videos, you'll know that I ink in black first. And I always get that question, why do you ink in black first? And it's really it's really a simple answer. It's because it's easier to see and it's easier to just focus on shape and not be too distracted by what the color is doing.
Yeah, that's a good tip. We have Cat Linus in the chat. She's an amazing illustrator of cats. And she's saying, I wonder if she could bend cats around letters to achieve the same effect instead of leaves.
That would be so fun. Like choose a simple word like hi or something, but I absolutely want you to do that and tag me on Instagram.
I was about to say, yeah, please tag us both. I'd love to see that cat.
Oh, that would be so fun.
Do it with the word cat.
Yes, actually. I mean, the C would be easy, you know, kind of curled around the C. I also thought, like, I'm not particularly good. Well, no, I'm not good at all at drawing bodies, but I also thought it could be a fun thing to do with bodies too, like maybe yoga poses or something, having the bodies kind of curve around the letter forms. Any of you out there, if you're really good at drawing human forms, maybe you can try that. I want to see that version too.
It's like at sporting events where it's like,
yeah.
Give me an S.
Exactly.
And then you hit up the chiropractor the next day.
Right. Give me a painkiller. Yeah, just like that. But I just love, I mean, do you see the texture on this brush? I just love this really gritty texture.
One of my favorite things is seeing the diversity of work created using brushes, because I guarantee that the brush creator never envisioned them being used for this kind of thing.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, it's really effective there.
Yeah, and I think for this piece anyway, you know, the message being calm, it just makes me feel like this particular, the texture on these brushes just feels very relaxed to me. You know, it doesn't feel too buttoned up, which is what I really like about it for this piece especially. So do you guys have a long weekend ahead? Do you have a bank holiday coming up?
We do actually. Yeah, we do. And this rare event is scheduled, I think, where we're actually going to see some sun. So all of the Brits are going to take advantage of that, I'm sure. I have several visits to the pub planned, including, I mean, literally like 10 minutes after the session, I'm meeting people at the pub. We got to squeeze every moment we can, especially after the year we've all had.
Yeah. So you guys can hang out now? Like, are your restrictions lifted?
Not entirely, but we can.
Yeah.
There are less.
Right.
And like I got my first vaccine in the last week, so you know there's still caution, but
yeah,
we can actually chat and laugh again instead of like keeping at a complete distance and spraying ourselves with disinfectant every 5 seconds.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
You guys are actually ahead of us, I think, on that.
I can't say for sure. I've been in my house. I don't know what the world is doing.
You know what? Like so many creative friends, when COVID first hit, were like, "Yeah, my life's no different."
Yeah,
like
pretty much.
I'm just at home creating stuff.
The only thing that changed was my kids were also home, so there was that. But really, I mean, not much difference for this introvert. I was like, oh, I don't have to decline invitations. Yay. But no, it will be nice to be able to be a little bit freer in the coming months, but we're still going to be pretty cautious.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm looking forward to conferences and that kind of thing again. And I think we gave a little teaser the other week, but once it's all safe, we are indeed thinking about some DC meetups, probably starting in London, which would be super fun. Long overdue. We wanted to do them for years, but we've just been so busy. Like, I think it's time.
That'll be fun. All right, almost done with the leaves here. I'm curious how many people who are on draw digitally. Is everybody here a digital artist?
Yeah, let us know in the chat. Analog, digital, or both. In fact, don't let us know in the chat. Let me set up a poll. I do like to set up a poll.
Oh, yay. We're fancy. We can do polls.
Saving up the good stuff here. Digital, analog, or both. So yeah, if you click on polls just below this live stream, let us know. So far, both is leading by some margin. A lot of analog and digital combined.
Oh.
And I don't want to inundate you with questions, but do let us know. It looks like several of you are down for a London meetup. So let us know if you're down for that. If we get 20 people confirmed, then Jem has promised to start off the event doing karaoke.
Jem, this can be reported as workplace abuse. Don't let him do this to you.
How did you know I was lying? That could have been a genuine passion of Jem's. Yeah, she's down. She said she can do karaoke, no problem.
Okay, so I just added a clipping mask on top of this layer. So I added a new layer, turned it into a clipping mask in case anyone is curious. And I think I'm going to use the sharp crayon from this brush set for my little line details.
I like how you keep your palettes pretty simple as well. Yeah. It's not a crazy variety of colors. It's quite limited, but it's still highly effective.
Yeah, I've been finding it even for client projects now these days when I use more than like 5 or 6 colors. I'm like, I need to pare this down. Like it's really seeped into my psyche using limited colors. I think it's a really good. I mean, it's not for everybody, obviously. Everything's not for everybody, but I think it's a really good way to push your skills, to kind of just figure out how to make just a few colors really work in a piece.
Mm-hmm.
I encourage people to try it, even if you don't, if it's not your thing and you don't love it. I really suggest trying it.
And is this all with the same brush still?
This is the same set. First, I was using the rough inker, and now I'm using the sharp crayon. And
perfect.
I mean, it's so little effort to create such an amazing effect with these brushes. And you really don't have to be precious about it, and it still looks good, you know?
Oh, some questions have come in. I've been so transfixed watching you draw. Forgot about the questions. Okay, great question. Sam always rocks the questions. Shout out to Sam Diaz. How do you know when to stop adding elements to the illustration and lettering?
Oh, Sam, the age-old question. Because honestly, one could sit for hours just tinkering. I step back a lot, just kind of pull back, take a good objective look, and, you know, just get a feel for, am I going overboard? Is it feeling sparse? Like for these little lines and stuff, I just kind of check in to make sure that it's not overwhelming, overpowering, or not too sparse.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's always a tough call to know when you're done, like to just call it done, you know? That's always a challenge.
Right, I have noticed you rotating and zooming in and out quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, I'm sorry, it's probably a pain to watch, but when you're actually drawing, you know, you want to get in there nice and close to get all of your detail, but always kind of pop back out, take a look.
Love it.
Because,
sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, there are times when you're so hyper focused on one section that you don't even realize that it's not working for the whole, you know? So yeah, always zoom out. I need more space between those petals. That's why I'm undoing this. What was the other question?
The next question is from Jana, who asks, have you ever done negative space techniques using less malleable shapes? And I guess this is to the previous discussion about flexible felines.
Right. I have not. I've always tried it with leaves and flowers because that's my thing. But I am very curious to see how it will go. Like, for example, I saw somebody's Father's Day card, that they designed recently, and it wasn't using this technique, but they surrounded the letters with line art of like tools and dad stuff, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought,
Gia,
that could be good. Mm-hmm.
Well, sorry to interrupt. I think I just spotted the gap. It's in the bottom right one, just where the indent happens.
This one or this one?
I can't see your brush.
I'm sorry, you can't see me pointing.
No, the far,
Here?
up, just up from there where it kind of indents. So,
here?
Like, nope. So on the outside of the petal, this is really hard to describe. On the bottom petal, there. Yeah.
You're becoming a pro, Tom. You knew that there was a gap because it filled my page with color.
You'd be amazed. Like, given that I don't really do this work myself, because sadly I don't have enough time outside of the day job, the number of random Procreate techniques and lettering techniques that I picked up from years of doing these, I have a lot of knowledge and very little talent, sadly.
That's funny. Okay, what else am I doing in pink? I'm going to do this little
Oh no, that's so perfect. The next question is from Leslie. It says, how are you showing us what you're drawing without us seeing your hands? We are.
I know.
We're
It's so weird.
gesticulating. No, I think it's absolutely been great following along though.
I know it is a little disorienting to just see things appearing on screen.
Nita has the next question and asks, how do you figure out what kind of flowers will look good with a particular lettering? It's a good question.
Yeah. Trial and error. Like sometimes I'll do, like for example, last October, I did some lettering for, did I post that on Instagram? I think it was just on my newsletter where I lettered the word October. And because of the color palette and the season, I did these really kind of spiky, weird flowers because it seemed more, apt than drawing really sweet, rounded florals. I'm switching back to the sharp crayon here for the line details. So yeah, I think it just depends on the content. If it's something like this says calm and it's supposed to be really kind of serene, so everything has very rounded shapes. But, if it's something, for example, I shared on stories yesterday, and I will eventually share in my on my feed, a book cover that they just released. They just revealed the cover for this book that I designed the cover for. And they wanted, the book is about a modern take on romantic tropes. And so initially I had drawn these really kind of romantic covers with these really sweet florals, almost like vintage florally type of artwork. And they were like, well, this is a really modern version of romance. So I went back and just made the flowers bolder with bigger petals and brighter colors, so content a lot of the times does dictate what the florals will look like. So I try to pay attention to what it is that I'm lettering, or if it's a client project, what's the overall feel of the piece needs to be. Yeah. And then kind of create accordingly.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I mean, for both floral content and color palette and everything, it would be weird if the word was calm and then you had that thing from Little Shop of Horrors or something looming out. Yes, it would be a bit incongruous.
Exactly. All right, let's see here.
Jana has another question, if I may, Gia.
Sure.
How do you come up with your color palettes?
Oh, I've got a Skillshare class on that too. It's actually much like this. Like, it seems difficult to do, but I kind of have come up with a step-by-step process that I use every time I make a palette. That makes it much easier and much more reliable to come up with colors that work well together. I don't know if you have a Skillshare account. If you don't, you can get 2 weeks free, watch my class and hop out of there before you have to pay anything. But a lot of the times I'm inspired by just things I see. Sometimes I'll see a cool photo and I feel like there's good colors in there that I want to use. And then I kind of work through the process that I outline in the class for how to get those colors to play well together. Because I think that's the hardest part for most people, is they see colors they like you'll see a photograph and you're like, oh, this has pink and blue and purple in it. I love that. I want to do that. But the trick is really getting those colors that you like to play nicely together. So yeah, I have a technique for it and it's in my class. It's a little too much to try to explain here, but it's really just about finding inspiration and then using that technique to kind of tweak the colors until they all work well together. That's the biggest thing, because you can't just put colors side by side and think that it's going to work as a palette once you start creating art with those colors. That often does not work. So yeah, you kind of have to see how they interact with one another. That's the biggest trick to it.
Amazing.
All right.
Did you know, fun fact about Skillshare, I believe when they started, their model was like in-person workshops in very specific areas. Yeah, it was never this kind of online subscription-based thing. They were literally trying to do very, very unscalable workshops, and the whole model just did not work. So they had to pivot into what we know today.
Yeah, and I mean, good for them for pivoting, because it's working out. It's worked out well. Yeah, they've grown a lot, especially in the last year. And they're offering such a wide range of classes.
This is looking really, really good, Gia.
Thank you. You know, I never thought that I would enjoy teaching, but it is so rewarding to see people learn something new and then really excel at it, enjoy it, flourish. You know, even if they don't go on to become some kind of mega professional, they just really have a good time learning something new and feeling, you know, accomplished.
I actually found when I used to do a lot more teaching's often the best way to learn.
So true. I learned so much by putting classes together. That was a surprise to me too, because it also gives me an opportunity to deep dive into, you know, whatever topic that I'm teaching. And then on top of that, I've learned so much about production and, you know, sound and video and how to edit, and all of that has been super rewarding.
Yeah, just structuring your thoughts instead of it kind of bouncing around in your head.
Absolutely. That's been huge. It's just kind of looking inside your own head to figure out how you've done something, especially when it's something that you're so used to doing that it has become second nature to you. So you're kind of forced to break it down, figure out what is the process that you're using, how are you coming to these, you know, decisions, and then figure out how to relay that information to somebody else.
Yeah, it's known as the curse of knowledge. When you forget what it's like to be a beginner and you do something so many times, you're comfortable. You just kind of have this assumption it's easy for everyone.
Exactly. So I always put myself, fortunately, I think what also helps is that I am fairly new to lettering myself, you know, compared to my graphic design career in general, which I've been doing for 20 years. You know, lettering for me is this is what, the 4th year that I've been doing lettering. So being a beginner is not that far away in my distant memory, you know? So I very vividly remember being frustrated, and, you know, the moments when I had like that light bulb went off and I'm like, oh, now I get it. And something became easier. All of that's still very fresh. So I think that also helps.
Absolutely.
I'm just adding random details here as we're chit-chatting. But
the details add a lot somehow. I don't know. They seem to help bring out the negative space even more because it's the contrast of detail versus emptiness.
Exactly. That's why I really enjoyed using these brushes. And I'm going to, let me try this dry stroke shader. Not sure if I've used this before, but the other thing that you can do to kind of bring out the letter forms is just kind of add a little bit of highlight. Not so much that it's distracting, but just enough to bring a little attention to the shapes of the letters. I don't even know if that's reading on screen. It's very subtle.
Oh, yeah, it is. That took me a second there.
Yeah, I'm just using white on cream.
That's a good tip, though.
Yeah. And there we are.
Stunning. Absolutely stunning. One of my favorite sessions. Thank you so much, Gia.
Absolutely. Let me see if I can figure out how to end my...
Jem just said, boom. That looks awesome. It does. I always think it like instead of a mic drop, it's like an Apple Pencil drop at the end. Gia, I just want to say a massive thank you for being part of this event on behalf of the whole team and community here at DC. We appreciate you a ton. I learned a lot, and I know everyone else did, and we'd love to welcome you back in the future.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. And thanks for having me come hang out. It's always fun to touch base with the Design Cuts community. Everyone here is always so welcoming, not only the people in the community, but everyone at Design Cuts. So thank you so much.
Always a pleasure. And again, please go check out Gia's newsletter, and the team have been linking up throughout the session where they can go follow you, Gia. But let's post those links one more time, please. And please go support Gia. She's awesome and just an incredible teacher.
Thank you.